Woman noticed something strange while boarding the plane. This was supposed to be the only flight today, but there were only a few passengers in the huge cabin. Just as she sat down, the overhead light started flickering non-stop. The man next to her said it was normal. That finally made her feel a little better. But right after that, there was a loud commotion from the rear cabin. An elderly woman said in panic she needed to get off the plane right away. No matter how the flight attendant comforted her, it didn't work. Kate quickly stepped forward to help. She happened to be a psychiatrist. She suspected the old woman was having a panic attack. After some counseling, the old woman calmed down a lot. Then Kate returned to her seat, fastened her seatbelt, and heard a metal scraping sound above her. She quickly asked the man beside her if he heard it, but Lucas just looked confused. Yet the sound kept echoing. Suddenly a wave of unease came over her. She rushed into the bathroom, splashing cold water on her face, trying to calm herself down. Then she suddenly heard her mother's voice outside the door. She turned around and found the bathroom door had changed. Kate quickly pushed it open. She found herself back in her childhood home. The place was empty with no one around. Her mother's voice came from a bedroom. Kate hurriedly opened the door, only to find herself back in the airplane cabin. Kate stood there in a daze. It all felt like a hallucination. But just as she turned to go back to her seat, she felt a shadow behind her. She turned around, and the shadow vanished into thin air. Her briefly settled nerves were on edge again. Kate slowly walked forward to check it out. Suddenly a hand landed on her shoulder. It was the flight attendant asking her to return to her seat. The plane was about to take off, but the earlier feeling felt so real. Kate returned to her seat and kissed her daughter. That real touch gave her some relief. Soon the plane started taxiing. After a smooth takeoff, Kate finally relaxed. Up front, a businessman was about to enjoy a drink. He turned and noticed the artist behind him seemed to be sketching him. He asked about it, but the artist had a bizarre expression, then suddenly blurted out,
"Pendulum that dies down."
The businessman thought he was acting crazy, so he just ignored him. Not long after, all the few passengers had fallen asleep, while the two flight attendants in the front cabin just sat there emotionless. They didn't move at all, and there was no emotion in their eyes. Suddenly all the windows on the plane turned red, but the two flight attendants still didn't move like puppets. Bathed in the red light, Kate began to dream. In the dream, she was 7 years old again. Her mom had just prepared dinner. Little Kate was happily eating, but when she looked up at the mirror, her mother's face was covered in blood. She quickly turned to check on her mom, but everything looked normal. Then she looked back at the mirror. It was still the same terrifying image. Little Kate started to suspect the woman in front of her wasn't her real mom. But just as the woman was clearing the dishes, Kate heard the metal scraping sound again, and then her mom's body began to twist and distort. Kate suddenly woke up from the dream. Thankfully, everything in the cabin looked normal, but soon the plane started shaking. It was turbulence. The flight attendant told everyone to stay in their seats. At that moment, a passenger in the rear cabin suddenly had trouble breathing, then collapsed to the floor. Kate told everyone to lay the man flat. After she performed CPR, the man suddenly opened his eyes and grabbed Kate's neck, muttering strange incantations. Kate quickly pushed the man away, but none of the other passengers saw what just happened. They were all startled by Kate's strange actions. Then the man started convulsing uncontrollably. Lucas kept calling Kate's name, trying to snap her out of it, but Kate saw a black hand stretching out from the back row, followed by a horrifying face. And only when the man stopped shaking and died did the shadow finally vanish before Kate's eyes. Before anyone could react, the plane shook violently again. A flight attendant was thrown into the air, then slammed back down. Kate quickly shielded her daughter. Luckily, the plane stabilized moments later. Kate immediately checked on her daughter. Thankfully, she was unharmed. But at that moment, Kate finally understood why all of this was happening. It turned out that when she was 7, she had taken a flight with her mother, and the situation on that flight was exactly the same. It was also the only flight that day, and there were only a few passengers. Soon after takeoff, she fell asleep, and when she woke up again, her mother was gone. Someone in the rear cabin seemed to be sick. She wanted to see if her mom was there, but then the plane started shaking violently, and there were murmuring voices from behind. When she turned to look, an old woman was chanting some kind of spell. Suddenly the old woman opened her eyes, and they had no pupils. Then the plane caught fire and started to dive. She ended up being the only survivor of that flight. Now Kate finally realized, even after 20 years, that old woman still hadn't let her go. But to Lucas, this all sounded too absurd. He thought it was just Kate's hallucination. Kate didn't want to explain further, but she had no idea what else to do. After a while of smooth flying, her daughter showed her a drawing she just finished. It was of the plane, and she and her mom were sitting in the very back row 19. Kate said that wasn't their seat, but her daughter thought it was a good place to sit. At that moment, Kate's focus was still on all the strange events. Suddenly she remembered something. She pulled up her pants leg. There was supposed to be a lifelong scar there, but now it was mysteriously gone. Then she realized, with so much happening on the plane, the captain should have come out and said something, but he never showed up. up. Everything seemed to confirm her suspicions. Then her daughter turned and started whispering to someone behind her. Kate quickly asked who she was talking to. Her daughter said there was a little girl back there, but when Kate turned around, there were only empty seats. It was exactly like what happened when she was 7. Kate quickly hugged her daughter tightly. Just when she didn't know what to do, the flight attendant came out and announced, because of the incidents in the cabin, the plane would be rerouted and land at Tolmachevo Airport. When she heard that, Kate suddenly felt suffocated, because when she was 7, that flight was also headed to this airport. It was clear she couldn't escape this fate. Just then her daughter started crying again. She said the little girl told her that when a man catches fire, mom will leave her. Kate quickly looked around, but didn't see anything unusual. What they didn't expect was, in the overhead compartment, medical alcohol had spilled, and was dripping right next to the businessman's feet. The impatient businessman pulled out a cigarette. Kate rushed over to stop him, but it was too late. The alcohol instantly caught fire, and the man became a human torch. Inside the flames was the terrifying face of the old woman. Kate completely lost control. When she calmed down, the fire had already been put out. Seeing the businessman barely alive, Kate was on the verge of collapse, because no one else could see those things. Then she spotted a shadow, running wildly through the cabin. She chased it to the last row, and was horrified to see in the reflection. She was asleep on a couch. When Kate woke up on the couch, it all seemed like a terrible dream. Her daughter came over and called her to take a shower, because they had to catch a flight tomorrow. Kate quickly touched her calf. The scar was still there. Thinking about the dream, she decided to cancel tomorrow's flight, and just stay home. But when she went to the bathroom, she heard that metal scraping sound again outside the door. Kate quickly looked through the peephole, and saw the shadow again. Before she could react, she heard her daughter crying. Kate frantically searched around, but her daughter was nowhere in the house. Then everything in the room started flying around. Her daughter's pounding came from outside the door. Kate quickly opened it, but what she saw outside made her drop to her knees in pain. When Kate came to again, she was back on the plane, and her daughter ran toward her. At this point she couldn't tell what was real, but at least she was still with her daughter. But as soon as she turned her head, the old man who had already died suddenly turned into a terrifying figure. Kate fell back in horror. Countless black hands reached out from the seats, trapping her in place. In despair she looked up and saw seat number 19. The image of the old woman's curse flashed in her mind again. Then Kate suddenly woke up. She was completely mentally broken. But when she turned her head, the shadow was back near the cockpit. Kate decided she wouldn't wait around any longer. She grabbed her daughter and tried to leave, but was stopped by a flight attendant. Seeing them looking toward the cockpit, Kate knew there was a secret there. Before she could say more, one flight attendant suddenly started throwing up water non-stop. Her daughter backed away in fear, which meant she saw it too. This was no illusion. Then the flight attendant's eyes turned white, and she collapsed. Kate ran away in panic. When she passed the artist, she saw him trying to avoid her, still frantically sketching. Kate grabbed his sketchbook, and saw that he had drawn everything that happened. He seemed to know the future, until Kate saw the end of the hallway he had drawn. She finally realized that was the exit from this nightmare. But just then, the artist in front of her burst into flames and vanished. Kate ran for her life. Lucas chased after her, but blood was streaming from his eyes. Kate forced herself to stay calm, used all her strength to break open the door, but behind the door was just another plane cabin. She opened one door after another, but behind each one was still more cabin. She seemed trapped in a loop she couldn't escape. She kept telling herself it was just a dream, but when she turned around, her daughter was gone. She called out her name, only to find her daughter sitting in the last row. Suddenly the black shadow slowly walked toward her daughter. Without thinking, Kate rushed forward. The shadow turned into a black mist and charged at her. Time seemed to slow down in that moment. The shadow morphed into Kate's face when she was 7, and right then, her childhood memory came flooding back. Kate finally understood the spell the old woman had chanted. It turned out everything now, and everything Kate experienced over the past 20 years, was all an illusion created by little Kate at age 7. When the crash was about to happen, the old woman behind little Kate didn't want her to witness death, so she cast a spell to put her to sleep. But little Kate kept trying to wake up. That was her unyielding will. So now the old woman decided to wake her up, to return her fate to her own hands. In that moment, Kate and little Kate became one. Her daughter said they would meet again, and told her to listen carefully. At that instant, she remembered the seat in her daughter's drawing was row 19, and she had seen the same number while being strangled by black hands. Kate suddenly realized, and little Kate instantly woke up from the illusion. The plane was falling in flames. Little Kate ran to her mother, used all her strength to drag her to seat 19. With Lucas's help, they made it. After putting on the oxygen masks, the plane dove into the river. Everyone else died. Only Kate and her mom in row 19 survived. The movie ends here.